Welcome everyone to the latest session at LocalGov Drupal Week 2024. It's Wednesday. We're just over halfway now. Thanks very much for coming. Hopefully this session is going to keep you energized and inspired. Finn Lewis is our tech lead at LocalGov Drupal, also director of Open Code. Is going to be talking about, well, the title is Looking Forward to 2025 LocalGov Drupal Developments. I have an idea of what he's going to be talking about, but I'll let Finn talk about what he's going to be talking about in a minute. Thanks everyone for coming, and thanks Finn for running the session. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank our event sponsor, Agile Collective, who are a worker-owned agency that designs, builds, and supports websites for purpose-driven organizations, including councils. They've been a leading technical partner for LocalGov Drupal since the beginning, since 2020, and they currently hold the developer contract for the project. So thank you very much for their support for this. They wouldn't be possible. LocalGov Drupal would not be possible without their support and others, including our councils and supplier subscribers, and our supporting partners, including Netcall, who've contributed so much for the project. I think Finn's basically going to be sharing a screen with a slide deck and running through that. If you want to toggle your view, then you can do that in the top right of your Zoom screen. You should be able to see a sort of view toggle. You want to sort of play around with that to see what works best for you. I think we'll take questions. And Finn said he's got, leaving plenty of time for discussion and questions. You can add them to the chat as we go. You can also, we'll do time for, just raise your hand and jump in and have a discussion. Finn, over to you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. There is a link there on where it says slides, bit.ly/LGD 2025, which will take you to the slide deck, and you should be able to view it should you want to view it and click on links in it or anything like that. So yeah, I'm Finn. I had the opportunity to go to Drupalcon Barcelona in September to talk about LocalGov Drupal Microsites, which was a great opportunity to share what we're doing at LocalGov Drupal, especially with microsites, with the wider Drupal community. It was also a great opportunity to get re-energized by what's going on in the wider Drupal community, especially around a few key points that Dries, the founder and lead of Drupal, shared in his State of Drupal update. So that has inspired a few things that I wanted to bring back and talk about here. There is a link there as well at the bottom of that, which Maria dug out, to my presentation at Drupalcon Barcelona, should you be interested in that, although you'll probably know most of the points there, and I will cover some of the others in this one. Another shout out to Agile Collective. I've worked at Agile Collective, I used to work at Agile Collective since 2011, since we started it, and yeah, they are those things that were said already, but there's also a link to their website there. Do check them out if you haven't already. I'm still collaborating with Agile Collective, but now work at Open Code alongside a bunch of other lovely and talented and very experienced Drupal developers, including Eeks, Tank, and Mark Conroy. We're doing work for LocalGov Drupal and councils with LocalGov Drupal, including Greenwich and other non-profit organizations. So briefly, session outline, going to look a bit about LocalGov Drupal microsites, where we're at, looking ahead to where we're going, and hopefully inspire some more conversation around that. A little bit about AI in Drupal, artificial intelligence and where that's going. That's something that I've only recently sort of opened my mind to, let's say. Drupal CMS, formerly known as Starshot, a project which Dries instigated at the beginning of this year at DrupalCon Portland, and is leading some rapid developments in the Drupal community, which is of interest to us at LocalGov Drupal. And then talking a little bit about hosting collaborations and just exploring some ideas around where we might go with that over the coming year. And as mentioned, plenty of time for questions, ideas, discussions. So do write things down as we're going, or save them up and we can talk about them. So LocalGov microsites, and apologies, this may be repeating some things that people already know, but I think it's worth covering just in case people aren't using them yet or don't know where we're going. But where are we at now? We've got a stable release of microsites since September, just before DrupalCon Barcelona. This was sort of fundamentally the aim of the microsites mission this year to get it to a stable release. I think we now have 31 plus microsites that we know of out there in the wild, which is great and growing rapidly. Now that it's stable, we're expecting many more people to come on board. But of course, it doesn't stop there. Constantly, this is a stable release, but we need to continually improve it, and we know there's many improvements to make. So coming very soon, two things. One, LocalGov Live Preview, which is for theme editors, which we can have a look at in a second, coming from Mark Conroy's work on, we'll have a look at it in a moment, and Mercury Editor for content editors, which is following the same kind of principle of being able to edit content, but in the front end rather than in the back end. So improvements to UX all around. And looking ahead to 2025, a couple of things that have come up recently in microsites meetups. Permissions and roles. At the moment, there's kind of two roles, like editor and admin within LocalGov Microsites, and it seems like there's a need for a bit more flexibility with that, different roles, different control over permissions. Maybe you might want a microsites with an event editor separate from a directory editor, for example. But also access control, again, around the permissions and access private content, for example. That's a question that's come up multiple times. Can we have a microsite where some of the content is private and some of it isn't? So again, this kind of permissions, building off the group sites module that from the Drupal contrib and the group module. And then finders, briefly mention finders. Directories, basically, formerly known as directories, it is known as directories at the moment, LocalGov directories, which we can have in microsites, is being abstracted into something a bit more generic called finders, so that we can have more consistency across finding things like directory entries or news or events or blogs. And so extracting that work's going on in the events working group at the moment, and we're going to want to bring that into microsites to make that more consistent and build on build off the benefit from the power of finders and facets in that consistent way. So let's have a quick look at a couple of those things. Live demos, always fun. Which one are we going to start with? This one. So, interestingly, I'm not logged in, but that's because I'm in the wrong browser. I'm going to go to this one. This is a microsite, one I made earlier. I've just logged into the microsite. For anyone familiar with microsites, you'll know this, but the standard way at the moment of editing the site design is to go to your microsite administration as an admin user, click on the site design link, where you can control your colors and fonts and all the things that make the site look and feel how it does. However, in order to see those changes, you need to save, go back home and go, oh, has the font changed? Oh yeah, I think it has. Now, Mark Conroy on the call. Hello, Mark. With his passion and cleverness and hard work, has now introduced this live preview module, which exposes the same bits of functionality, but in the front end. So we can click into the sidebar here. So click on Edit Microsite Design, and that brings up the same form fields here. Let's just have a look, global styles, go back to those fonts and start changing these fonts. And you can see that they change pretty instantaneously on the left-hand side. So this is obviously great. This is not like built in yet, but it's coming very soon. We need to add a bit of testing and possibly some other, so automated testing and just wider testing of the integrations. But it's really, really quite powerful if your aim is to point and click your way to different look and feel for the site. Another nice little feature that has sort of come out of this is just you'll be familiar with, or you may or may not be familiar with, the LocalGov Sally module, which brings the accessibility checker called Sally into the side there, which Mark and Maria developed in the early days of microsites. And this is now working. Whoops, let's go back. This is now working alongside the color picker. So let's just pick a color of the header that's going to be very inaccessible potentially. And then we can click on Sally to see that text definitely doesn't have enough contrast. So giving site themers, site builder themers, designers, admins of microsites, the power to quickly see how their site's going to look and also double check the accessibility. Very, very cool. Hoping that we can bring that into microsites proper maybe by the end of the year, but it depends on how much what comes out of our testing. Really, just want to make sure it's solid. But you can install it right now. You can install it directly from Composer if you're that way inclined. Another thing on this is the content editor side, so the Mercury editor. If I click on edit, Mercury editor is for layout paragraphs, and it replaces the Drupal default editor page, which would come up as a form in your admin theme, with the same page and functionality essentially, but within your front end theme. So you can see, let's turn slightly up. It's annoying me. You can see that we're looking at the front end theme now, but we've also got the potential to add sections or edit pieces of content directly in here. And with the live edit, I think it's called, you can just click in and start making, changing text as you like, and then click save and done, and it's all done. So again, focusing on the kind of editing content in the front end so that you can see how the changes are going to have effect in a much quicker way. One other thing to note on this, actually, it's got a nice little toggle between mobile view, which if you're adding sections which might have multiple columns or whatever, is a nice way to just double check that that's all going to carry on and work. So I think this kind of thing, to be tested, to be just take feedback from the wider community. But I imagine that as a content editor on a microsite, this sort of front end editing tool will be popular. And I think this nod to Andy Broomfield from BHCC, Brighton and Hove, first pointed this out to us. And it's out there ready to be installed. Like I said, we haven't integrated this directly fully yet, but it's another great thing that I think we're going to be able to bring in fairly soon. And I just want to make sure we add tests and checks and balances to make sure that it's not going to break anything and that everything's still possible. So how are we doing for time? Okay, not bad. There's other things which we can have a look at in microsites should people have questions towards the end. Where do we get to? So looking ahead to 2025, we want to have these two things that I just showed you consolidated as a default install. We want to increase flexibility with the permissions and roles. We want to bring finders in, which I think is going to be a reasonably big job, but will provide a lot of consistency and flexibility in the functionality, the good stuff that we have in directories across all of our types of content that need to be found and searched. And one other thing I thought about just at the last minute was like hosting and deployment workflows, looking through recent conversations in microsites, drop-ins and so on. Often a challenge with microsites is we've got dev, test, live, we're testing out content on one of them. Sometimes that content, we actually kind of want to test that content out on live. We want to test other things first. So the whole deployment workflow of hosting with microsites is slightly more of a challenge than with LocalGov Drupal core. So I think making that easier, sharing what approaches, documenting that, maybe adding some videos or having some kind of consistency of approach would be really good to encourage adoption. AI. So next thing, AI, artificial intelligence in Drupal. It scares me. I'm scared of AI. I was scared of AI. I am still scared of AI because I think, I've seen Terminator and it had a massive effect on me as a young child. I think that's probably just my trauma still bubbling up. But it's, it's not just, a joke that it is scary and they're all going to take over the world. I do worry about giving lots of data to a few already very powerful companies and not really knowing what they're doing with it. I'm sure they do have policies and the rest of it, but if we're using services, we're just kind of like giving away a lot of data. I feel like we've potentially got less control over the information we're providing to end users, and perhaps some of this is coming from my naivety and sort of just sticking my head in the sand and going, "Oh, AI, really? No, come on, let's just like focus on other things that we have more control of and sovereignty over." However, Dries, founder and lead of Drupal, as part of his keynote, introduced the responsible AI principles. This slide is shamelessly lifted from his slides, which you can get at that link at the bottom. But I thought it's just useful to really draw attention to these because it kind of changed my perspective on it and made me think that this is something that we can do in a good way, do in a responsible way. That's a good word, that, responsible. The first one being human in the loop. This principle is around not just blindly generating content with AI and serving it up to your users, using it more so if you're a content designer, using it to help your content design work, make that more efficient, quicker, better, richer, and yeah, if you're on a call center, using it to help you find stuff, but you're still filtering that through a human, deciding what you want to keep or augment or edit and change. Second is transparency, making sure people are aware that AI is involved in some of this content generation, which I think is really important and interesting to think about how we would do that if you're generating content and then reviewing it. Just clear policies that some of our content designers use AI to help with the content generation. The third, and I think this killed it for me, or opened my eyes to the possibilities, is swappable language models. So behind all the AI interactions there's a large language model, LLM. What I didn't realize until very recently is that we can self-host those. There's open source projects to self-host your own large language model and obviously train up your own large language models, potentially develop your own LLMs for your subject or sector-specific use. And the fourth is promoting responsible AI, so promoting these principles in our community. So that for me codified a way to potentially start using AI in within a safe framework, I guess, which I was like, oh wow, yeah, cool. Obviously. So I can't see my slide now because all your pictures are there. AI and Drupal. What can we do in Drupal already? It's where we can help content designers to generate copy in CK Editor, change the tone of copy, all the kind of things that you can do in ChatGPT, right? We can do it directly in the editor. Summarize copy, format HTML. It's very good at doing that kind of stuff, and potentially generate alt text for images. Some things that blew my mind at DrupalCon, which I'm not going to demo now, but it's worth looking at his demo, is around site builders. So site builders being kind of Drupal developers essentially, but who are doing it without coding. We're pointing and clicking our way to creating content types, to creating taxonomies and vocabularies. And Dries demoed a chatbot linked with Drupal agents to basically create a new taxonomy, populate it with wine regions, and assign that field to an event content type, or just natural language, and it goes away and rebuilds your sections of your Drupal site. So I think is a little scary. Then we're not going to need Drupal developers anymore. But it means that even as Drupal developers, we can just get AI to do those things quicker for us. And if anyone's ever tried to populate a large taxonomy of things like counties of the United Kingdom, AI is going to do that so much quicker than you sitting there, copy pasting and building out that bit of content. In the same way, building and executing data migrations, things that are obvious of this goes to that type things is potentially much quicker with AI and large language models. So let's have a little look. What have we got? I think this one. Okay, so this is a LocalGov Drupal site. I'll just demo a couple of the little integrations with CK Editor and the AI assistant. Let's create a renew blue badges page. I know blue badges is one of our favorite things. And so we've got the little AI assistant menu embedded in CK Editor. And all of this is, I wouldn't say this is stable, ready for live at all, but it is interesting to see what's on the way. How can I renew my blue badges, for example? I was trying to think of something more relevant than how to make a patatas bravas recipe super spicy and delicious. which is actually also very good at. So I just typed that prompt, it's gone away, talked to the LLM, and come back with a step-by-step guide to renewing blue badges in the UK, which is not going to be obviously the content you're going to want to give to your end users, but it's a good starting point potentially, especially if you're maybe just building out demo content to work on some of this. And I don't know the veracity of that particular content. So anyway, we can save those changes to the editor, and it's in there. As anyone who's played with things like ChatGPT and other LLMs, the more detailed question, the more often the more accurate and useful results you get. Let's just have a look at a couple of the other things in there. There's the reformat HTML thing, which seems to have mixed results. I think if you've got like markup or other copy or plain text, then actually it's quite good at turning that into a more presentable HTML, which could be super useful if you're bringing in, I don't know, PDFs, those kind of things. And a couple of others. The tone one is interesting. Again, hit and miss. Let's make it fun. Change the tone, and it's rewriting it in a different sense. And I'm sure anyone who's played with chatbots and AI and kind of knows the type of stuff that it's going to do there. But that could be useful if for changing the tone. Again, especially if we have something that's a little bit more trained up on our actual content. Anything else? Translation is another one, and summarizing is potentially useful, although it doesn't seem to summarize things quite how I expect it. But for example, if you've got a large body of text and you want to generate a summary for your teaser, you can imagine that AI is going to do a reasonably good job of that. But again, keeping the human in the loop. So let's just see what it does when we summarize it, because maybe actually it's not going to do a very good job. I mean, that's not a summary, is it? That's quite detailed, and it's missed out the step. So yeah. Potential uses for content headers directly in here, in the browser, in the content creation and edit form. Alt text for images is useful, of course, is important, is required. But sometimes you're not sure what to write. I'm not anyway. I just tend to write something because I'm usually testing, but we can generate alt text with AI, send it the image, and it will start to describe it. A group of people sitting outdoors on a sunny day. Again, human in the loop. You want to check that. Is that okay? Is it right? You can hit it again, and it will come back with something slightly different. 4 friends sitting together on a bench. And yeah, each time it's coming up with 5 friends. Okay, that's miscounting at some point. Or maybe one of them's not looking happy, so it's not a friend. Anyway, you get the picture. I think that could, be very useful, especially if you're uploading a bunch of images and that don't have alt text. Take a bit of the cognitive load off the content designer at that point. But again, keeping the human in the loop, checking that it's saying something sensible, and expanding it or altering it if needed. So AI, looking ahead, I think it's well worth exploring more integrations with the AI module. The AI module is set to be like a framework around which you can plug lots of other stuff into, much like Search API, but for AI. So you can plug in other providers like Fireworks or OpenAI, or your own local OpenLlama large language model. I think these responsible AI principles is great, much like the principles of open source or the Drupal community. Having that kind of guidelines. I think we should enshrine those in the work that we're doing in LocalGov Drupal as well. Makes sense. And possibly explore developing our own sector or subject-specific large language models. We've got a lot of councils, we've got a lot of content, we've got a lot of stuff to feed at LLM. I don't know how to do that yet, but I'm sure we can find people who do. And training up. One of the sessions I saw in Drupalcon Barcelona was from David Swisser, who's working with the French government, and they have been training up their LLM to provide call center staff with quicker access to response around all things government, I think. And so a lot of data, and very specifically to help respond to questions in a natural language query mode, but for to then answer people's emails or telephones, and they've reduced like response times from something like several days to several hours, and increased positive response. So I think there's definitely potential value there in exploring that kind of model. And I mentioned OpenLlama, I think it's, or OLlama, not quite sure how to say it, but it's the open source large language model tool that you can install locally and play with and chat to if you're bored late at night. Drupal CMS, last thing I think. So Drupal CMS used to be called Starshot. This is a initiative like sparked by Dries back in earlier this year, 6 months before. So at March, DrupalCon Portland, I think he said, right, we want a Starshot, we want a Drupal installation that's going to basically be super easy to use for people pointing and clicking, low code, no code, changing how things look and feel, make Drupal Plus with all the key modules that you need to do a decent promotional sort of campaign or marketing site. This has been gaining massive momentum with various things coming out of it, including Project Browser, where you can, rather than going to Drupal.org and finding your project and then installing it with Composer, you can do it from within the Drupal site. Recipes, again, from within the Drupal site, but allowing you to put together a bunch of content types and configuration and dependent modules, much like LocalGov Drupal does, but from within your browser, and combine them with other recipes. We'll have a quick look at that in a minute. And then Experience Builder, which is kind of similar to what we were just looking at in microsites, insofar as being able to point and click your way to theme and layout and look and feel of your site without necessarily going into HTML, CSS, or Drupal theme building. I've seen a quick demo of that, but yeah, I think that's at early stages, and I think that's looking to be brought in a little bit later next year. Another slide stolen from Dries. Thank you, Dries. Sorry, Dries. Check out his website at the bottom there. Their target is to release Drupal CMS 1.0 on January the 15th, which is not very long away. And so this, really lights the fire under the developers who are working on it and the community as a whole to bring all of these different aspects of it together. And actually, a lot of these parts of it are really useful for us as LocalGov Drupal in our distribution. So I think this is worth keeping an eye on and looking at. Let's have a little quick look at Drupal CMS then. And this will be super quick, and then I want to get to some questions if there are any. Here is an install of Drupal CMS, and this is it out of the box, fresh install. It comes with various content types, like a basic page, also like video, audio, remote video, documents, different entities, but keeping them all in one place. It's got this nice kind of sidebar thingy bob. Well, I've noticed this thing earlier, which is like a sort of cookie thing powered by Claro, who I've not come across, but I guess I'm just super interested in every little aspect of this and what we can learn from it. But importantly, what I want to look at right now is if we go to extend and browse, then this is where you can start to extend your site with Project Browser. And Project Browser browses all of the projects on Drupal.org and allows you to install them directly from the browser. In theory, it doesn't actually work for me, so I'm not going to try it. But what does work is recipes, and this is the sort of evolving from Drupal distributions. But a recipe, we can see we've got events, blog. So let's just queue the events one to install and install selected projects. And that will basically bring, as it says, a content type and view to help you manage events. Now that we've done that, I think if we refresh the page, we should see the ability to create an event. There we go. So similar to sort of LocalGov Drupal, sort of various dependent modules that are sort of designed to be independent of each other. Recipes brings that same kind of compartmentalized functionality of content types and configuration. But also there's interesting things like the SEO tools, for example, and accessibility tools. Let's try both of them. which are maybe less around specific content types or bits of functionality within your content information architecture, more about best practice in SEO or accessibility. And once they're installed, I think if we go to the dashboard, which is another interesting thing that we might want to look at in LocalGov Drupal, we've now got an SEO dashboard with a bunch of things to go through and do, links to external resources, which I think this makes a lot of sense. It reminded me that the SEO checklist is a well-loved module which takes you through bit by bit all the things you want to do to make sure you're as SEO optimized as possible. Enable clean URLs, and then track your process through that. So that's actually just one module in the SEO checklist, but the whole recipe combines the modules and the dashboard and useful links and guiding people through the SEO things, just to make your site more optimized. There's loads of other stuff going on in Starshot and in the initiatives. It's a moving target, 1.0 in January, and then I think 2.0 at some point later in the year. And 2.0 will be bringing in the experience builder, I believe. I think that is the plan. So possibly things for us out of that. LocalGov Drupal as a recipe. I know there's been work on that already from Lee at TPX and EEX. At least they've both looked at that. Maybe others have as well. And so we're on our, we can basically create LocalGov Drupal as a recipe rather than as a whole distribution, so that you could install Drupal and then install LocalGov Drupal, or possibly a recipe of recipes. I think that's how it works. So you could have, we could have all our LocalGov directories, services, as different recipes, and then pick and mix those relatively easy in a browser. I think that would make it much more flexible for us and for other people too. And we can include other recipes like that SEO recipe or so there's other people developing recipes out there, which we can then go, actually, that's directly relevant to us. Let's just bring that in rather than reinventing the wheel again, and collaborate on those recipes. SEO, accessibility, performance being obvious ones. And then experience builder. It's basically rebuilding the entire sort of admin interface of Drupal in React. And it's going to, I think Dri said it's going to eat the admin UI of Drupal. And so we might want to keep an eye on that. I think it might well influence our direction. Might not be something we want to adopt wholesale in microsites or LocalGov Drupal, but some of those principles we're already pushing at in microsites of being able to point and click our way to look and feel Nirvana without needing to dive into the CSS and markup. And yeah, that could influence our direction both in LocalGov Drupal and in microsites. So, there was one more thing, the hosting thing. This is just an idea at this stage, but I was also very inspired by hosting conversations I had at Drupalcon Barcelona. And it struck me that most of our LocalGov Drupal websites have very similar needs for hosting, but many councils are hosting on fairly custom hosting infrastructures. And I was just like, well, is there an opportunity there to align? Suppliers also use a range of services and tools to provide hosting. And yeah, that's just got me thinking. And then I had, the potential to align is suppliers and councils to collaborate on an open source hosting system that is doing things in a consistent way, so that we avoid any kind of reinvention of wheels and share best practices and do the same side, have the same benefits of collaborating around something that we're seeing in LocalGov Drupal, the CMS side, but also with the actual, some of the infrastructure that we're using to deliver it. Lagoon is one thing. It's an open source Kubernetes based hosting platform that is provided, but was developed and provided by Maz Labs, maz.io, and you can check it out at lagoon.sh. They offer it as a service, and they have, you can buy it from them as a service, or you can take it and install it, and they will support it for a service, or you can get other people to learn how to support it yourself. So again, the open source tech, sort of dividing separating the sort of service from the actual the technology. There are lots of different ways of hosting. Ansible does other things. I know that Code Enigma and Agile Collective already use Ansible for hosting, configuration, automation, and all that stuff. So is there, is that already a commonality between other suppliers that we might look at aligning and sharing and open sourcing and making sure we're all, hosting things as well as possible and minimizing, sharing the load, minimizing the overheads, increasing the sort of like pool of knowledge within the wider community. Anyway, that's just an idea, but I'd be super keen to hear anyone's questions, ideas, thoughts, comments on any of those improvements to microsites, bringing responsible AI features into LocalGov Drupal, aligning on open source hosting architecture, and other things we can learn from Drupal CMS and the Drupal community. I will pause for breath and see if there's any. Oh, hello! I can see you again now.
Well done. Oh, excuse me. Well done, Finn. That was great. There has been quite a lot going on in the chat. Lots of sort of comments and links and things people are sharing, which has been great. There were some questions. I'm just coming up to the top. So let me just have a look. Yeah. Okay. So I had a question, but I'll start with Alistair's, which was to do with the Mercury editor. So are there plans to bring that into LGD core? You talked about it as a microsites thing, but what's the thinking? What's the direction of travel?
I think so. Well, it's for layout paragraphs fields. So the only place that currently in LGD core that is used is in subsites, I believe. Please, anyone, feel free to step in and correct me. So LGD core with subsites, LGD subsites, we have the layout paragraph stuff in there, and so it could be used there. I don't think it works with just like a normal body field and a normal field setup. So I think it's specifically with layout paragraphs.
So it has a sort of limited application in LGD at the moment, as the way it's.
Yeah. I think, as far as I know, that's the yeah. If we'd be looking towards having a sort of front end editing experience for other content types in LocalGov Drupal, that would probably want a slightly different approach, I guess. But I think it's slightly different use cases as well. Subsites and microsites, the content designers want to be able to do layout as well as just content. Whereas, it's like maybe that is something we want to look at bringing into service pages and guide pages and step-by-steps and those things, which I guess is a slightly separate but related question.
There may be something to take to the content group and explore, see what they think.
Indeed.
On content, I had a question that it was on works. I don't know if it's the right name of the module, but the workspaces, the new sort of content staging module, where you can sort of create a staging environment just for content, create a load of pages, have a look at it, and then publish.
Yeah.
And is that, again, is the idea maybe to bring that in? You didn't mention it, so I'm interested to know whether that's sort of being thought about microsites or LGD or both, or not quite yet.
It is. There is a bug with it at the moment, and it doesn't work very well with work workflows. So in LocalGov Drupal, we've got our workflows which provide the states of draft, review, published, deleted, or whatever. And those changes of state allow us to manage content on the site and in public states. Workspaces does something similar, which uses the revisioning system in a similar way, and there's a bit of a clash between them at the moment. So there's a core bug that we're working on to so if anyone's using workflows, which I think we do have enabled by default when we install LocalGov Drupal, then I wouldn't recommend using workspaces just yet, because it makes stuff. It makes content live, but just not on the URL. So node/123 would be, if you think it's in staging, it's actually available on the live site, which might not be what you want.
Cool, thanks.
But definitely going forward, to summarize, as soon as we fix that, I think Workspaces is a really powerful tool to manage your content in big swathes, especially if you're a council migrating and you want to release a whole section of content at once. You get that already in your workspace and you hit publish. and it publishes all of the content, and makes that a neat way to release all the changes.
Yeah, or updates to one section or something if you're doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam's asking if so you mentioned about the in-page editor feature being available hopefully early 2025. Do you have any time estimates on the AI assistant in LocalGov Drupal? Because obviously it's available in Drupal at the moment, as Mark said, like you could just go and download it already.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a bunch of questions around that, like what what service or large language model you'd want to use, and what do we think as content designers on how we want to use it. But yeah, totally, you can plug it in now. You can go and set up an account with OpenAI or Fireworks and configure it. But I think even the people who are at the forefront of this, building the AI module, don't recommend to do it in production just yet. They think it's still development. So it's still sort of like still moving pretty fast. I'm not sure on the actual.
Actually, on a live site, and I would be quite cautious about putting it on a live site, because I know I put it together on a Saturday, and we tried to deploy it on a Monday, and the module is moving so fast. I had to redo not much of it, but a little bit. There was some modules or some things that moved to sub modules, and other things that got deprecated because it was actually, it's beta now. It was only alpha at the time, maybe 2 or 3 weeks back. So if you're going to do it on a production site, I'd say no problem, but just be wary that you might have a little bit more maintenance than a stable module.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to let it stabilize before we're encouraging people to use it widely, or potentially including it as an optional in the default install.
Brilliant. Stella just mentioned that there is a demo, and I think Simon's also linked to it, but she got a demo of Experience Builder yesterday. She's on the steering group, is not quite the right word, committee. It says looking great, and Simon's linked to a demo of that if you want to have a look. Are there any other questions? Has anybody else got any questions? Feel free to just unmute and jump in and ask Finn.
I've only got, I know it isn't anything that you've mentioned, but is there anything in the pipeline on search within the site search and stuff? Where that's going, and also in relation to the new Google algorithm with search picking up AI stuff rather than pure content first, and how is that gonna have any impact on our sites and how we build them? Is that something we need to be looking at?
There is a track on search for Starshot. That 1x Internet are leading, I believe. But I'm not sure what the progress is. I think they're focusing on solar, but doesn't mean you have to use it. But yeah, there is there's an element focused on search, yes.
Cool.
Yeah, so I don't tell what the answer is. The second part of the question is whether Google's AI-driven search results mean that we need to be changing the way that we. Is there anything we need to do to make that more intelligent? I don't know the answer to that. But to the first question, like, are we doing anything on search next year? Will, who's not here today, Will Callahan, product lead, has said a few times that we'd like to bring more of the work that's been done on search within LocalGov Drupal, like Apache Solar and Best Bets and Did You Mean, and improving the user experience of search. There's lots of work that has been done, and there are optional modules that you can enable to help you get set up with those sort of things. So I think more work around that is certainly in the pipeline for next year. But that's more about on-site search.
Yeah. Rather than us being searched. Yeah.
Yeah.
All the sites being searched. Yeah. That's fine. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Anyone else? All right, lovely. Okay, I think we'll move to wrap up. So first of all, thank you very much, Finn, for a great session. That was very informative.